Just enjoy the harp for a minute or so, folks, and I'll be live shortly. So, welcome everybody. Philip Wade here from the Universal Studio in North Yorkshire, England, and I just wanted to talk today a little bit about the title that's on the screen there. I was reminded of the term that I use quite a bit from time to time at events, although I've never done a live specifically on it, although I've referred to it in other live streams. And that term is something I call the spiritual Sweety shop. And it's something to be aware of because it can become a spiritual trap in its own right. And it's not, there's anything wrong or right with it, like everything, it just is. But as one starts to awaken to your true nature and open up to spiritual self-realization, it can, for many people, to be really quite a surprise compared to a life that we've been living, and you start to wake up from the so-called dream, so to speak, and start to see a deeper reality that, if we're honest about it, most people aren't yet awake to, but it's increasing rapidly as time goes on. And this can be both an exciting and confusing time as you're awakening to that. And on the exciting side, there can be, and I've seen this quite a lot, a tendency to hop around between all sorts of different spiritual practices, workshops, books, teachings, you name it, any number of different facets of spirituality that can suddenly all start popping up in front of you, and diving around, hopping around, moving around between all of these. And at one level, this is an indication of the awakening process unfolding, and there's nothing wrong with it. But at another level, ultimately, if you're really serious about opening to the realization of who you really are, what the true aim should be is to dive deep into this question: who am I really? And ultimately, the answer to that isn't going to be realized or found anywhere else other than inside the inner infinite dimensions of who you really are. No matter how many spiritual teachings, no matter how many workshops, how many books and so forth you may read, ultimately that realization is only going to flower from within. No one, absolutely no one, not even the most realized being, can give this to you. It's a realization, hence the term spiritual self-realization, and it flowers from within. It doesn't mean, by the way, that these things aren't useful. You know, a book, a workshop, an event, a satsang, or whatever. But what it does call for is discernment, and I've got a separate video on discernment. So I'm not going to go into that in depth. But if you're really keen and focused on realizing and bringing an end to suffering and realizing your true nature, then all of this has to come back to in here and to be open to the truth that rests within for that realization to flower, to let go of, or let the belief dissolve that all I am is the body-mind. You see, there's only one fundamental block to spiritual self-realization, and that's the belief in the case of mistaken identity, that I am this body-mind. That creates a separation, the experience of separation from the infinite silence, the infinite consciousness, the infinite awareness that you truly are. And as that belief dissolves, the realization flowers. And also important in that process is the dissolution of the emotional body. In fact, it's fundamental, because that can, if that's not dissolved, it can drag you back into suffering. So ultimately, it's not about hopping about between hundreds of different teachings, hundreds of different books, hundreds of different workshops, and so forth. It's about opening to that which is already present and being discerning. And you have that discernment already within you. It's about following the calling of your heart. And that's a kind of inner knowing. It will feel inviting, expansive, uplifting. These kinds of energies, whereas the must, should, ought to of the mind will be contracting and forcing and egoic in nature. So the spiritual Sweety shop is a trap ultimately, because you start hopping around between all these different things, looking for something outside of you, when the true answer and the true realization rests within. And so it's a trap to avoid. As I say, there's nothing wrong with it and there's nothing right with it. It is what it is. But if you truly seek to bring an end to suffering and want to make that journey as smooth as it can be, then using discernment and only going with that specific practice, that specific pointing, that specific event that really your heart is truly calling you to. It's only going to flower from within, and no one is going to be able to give this to you. You have to be totally open to the dissolution of that belief, in that case of mistaken identity. So be very discerning about what it is you choose to read, what it is that you choose to listen to, what it is that you choose to take on as truth. And in fact, it's actually much, much more effective to be in the position and the trusting that actually you know nothing. I know nothing. This humility is actually going to open you up to that realization from within. If you think you know about this self-realization, you don't. It is a realization, a flowering that is not in the least bit personal. So you truly do know nothing. And as the realization flowers, that will be seen, and it will be the greatest OMG moment in the universe. Oh my gosh, I am that. And this I is not a personal I, it's the infinite I, as infinite silence or infinite consciousness. So if you truly are feeling called to that, do beware of this particular trap. There are many, and this is one of them. The hopping around between many different practices many different teachings and getting completely confused and lost and thinking that the answer's out there when the realization is already here within. That's pretty much everything I wanted to share on that. And I may be going live again because I've been asked to talk about some commonly used terms that lead to confusion. So look out for that later. Bye now. Gonna leave you with some harp. Where are we? And I've just remembered the title of the other one I was going to do, and it's called Light, Shadows and Self-Realization. People use these terms, light work, shadow work, and so forth, and it creates confusion. So I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes' time on a separate stream. Bye now. Oh, and I forgot to add that if anybody's called from this Friday, and I'm posting the link now, you can take part in some spiritual inquiry on Zoom sessions where we'll be exploring the questions that people have to do with their spiritual journey and spiritual self-realization. And the link to register is there now in the comments. And if you're watching in the Endless Peace and Love group, I will add that after the stream.